All right, kings, gentlemen, everyone else, welcome to this wonderful sunny day, and boy, what a day to start February. It would appear that the Orange Menace, the annoying Orange, has imposed 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, and make no mistake, these are taxes. They're going to be pushed down to the U.S. consumer and companies. And let's look a little bit into it, into what this actually means for the American economy, for the Canadian economy. I'm not going to look at Mexico because I'm not that familiar with the Mexican economy, and I don't really care, to be honest. So one thing that most Americans, I think, don't understand is just how deeply integrated Canada and America are, economically speaking. Like, how do you get so much traffic on a street this small? This is unfucking believable. Anyways, about 60% of America's crude comes from Canada. It's that ridiculously bad, but that's not even the most important thing. Crude is relatively fungible. You know, one molecule of oil is not exactly the same as every other molecule of oil, but it is, you know, just the same compound. No, what's really gonna put a kink in U.S.-Canada relations is the industrial connection between the two. So let's look at the auto industry, for example. The normal way things go is that auto parts are manufactured in Canada and then they are brought to America for assembly. And this is why you get these, so you know, the Ambassador Bridge between Detroit and Windsor, between Michigan and Ontario, it carries like 25% of US-Canada trade. And this is because of all the trucks zipping back and forth, carrying parts from Canada into America, or parts from America to be assembled into Canada. Really, when you think about it, Ontario, Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, this entire Great Lakes area of the North American continent is a single economic zone. And this has been like this since the 30s and 40s. It's actually it constituted a major transformation of Canadian identity, this great economic shift, because before that, Canada was more or less a resource extracting nation, which, you know, dug out oil, coal out of the ground, minerals, cut down timber, sent beaver pelts and fish back to Europe, sold them at a profit, and basically used that to grow its own economy. But in the 30s and 40s, it just switched to this industrial branch plant model, as has been sometimes derisively referred to by George Grant, the father of Canadian nationalism, who ironically declared Canadian nationalism by the 60s. Now, the thing about this is that imposing a 25% tariff on Canada, blanket or with exceptions, is going to have the immediate effect of spiking prices insanely within the United States and probably drive the country into a recession or depression. And that's a feature, not a bug. I used to think that Donald Trump was weapons grade retarded when he was suggesting these insane tariffs, but now I'm convinced that that's actually the point of it all. He's trying to destroy the American economy so that he and his oligarch buddies can buy it up for pennies on the dollar. For more details on that, refer to my American Yeltsin video, where basically I say that Donald Trump is going to do to America what Yeltsin did to Russia in the 90s. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to destroy America as a nation and will very likely cause damage to Canada as well. You know, so let's think about how we can salvage Canada, because America, I think, is beyond saving at this point. The hope would be that, okay, the Democrats are going to be against Trump, but the hope is that the Americans will not be willing to destroy America in the name of Trump's vendetta. And I'm hanging around at Republican chats. I'm hanging around, you know, the places where these people have internal debates with each other. And yeah, they're good for it. They're good for it. They don't even understand how tariffs work. It's embarrassing, really. Anyways, so how can we salvage Canada? Well, as I said, Canada already has the historical precedent of having once been Europe's resource extraction park. Britain's, but, you know. So let's say we started integrating Canada into the European Union, something that Canadian and European leaders have already alluded to. Let's just get the sun out of my camera. Something that Canadian and European leaders have already spoken about, and this would actually solve a lot of problems for Europe, because the inputs which Europe needs if it's going to reindustrialize, and Europe is already an industrial superpower. We just need to bring back more of the steps in the industrial process on the continent. What we're going to need are two major inputs. Those are raw resources, and Canada has a lot of those. Canada has a fuck ton of oil. That's the technical term. Canada also has a lot of mineral wealth. But more importantly, because of the branch plant industrial model, Canada already is very comfortable in manufacturing the parts for someone else's industry, sort of being part of the industrial process without having the entire industrial process within its borders. And that's precisely what Europe needs, because the problem of Europe is not that we don't have industry, but that the parts for our industry are coming not from America, they're coming from China. Now, it sort of works out because we sell the machine tools to China and to America necessary for these parts, so that, you know, we ship them back to Europe and make the finished products, and that's the construct we call the global economic system. It sounds a little convoluted and insane, and maybe it is. Maybe we should be doing all of these things in country, right? But it's not a bad thing to be friends with your neighbors. The whole idea of it was, let's trade with the Chinese and make them our friends and neighbors in a rapidly globalizing world. Obviously, this failed. But Europe and Canada, we can get together. We can hang out, and we can also be united by a shared enmity towards a certain annoying orange down in Washington. You know, the Florida man from Mar-a-Lago. And this is going to work out great for both Canada and for Europe if the Canadian economy can be reoriented to start serving as Europe's resource extractor and spare parts, essentially, part, instead of America's. Now, it is going to require a realignment of Canadian infrastructure, and of course, we are not going to be able to, you know, as Europeans, trade with Canada to the same extent that the Americans could. Let's just sit down here and finish this video, because you have to move back into the streets to do it. All right, that's a new sensation. Anyways, because one of the most important things, aspects of U.S.-Canadian trade is energy. Basically, the Canadians manufacture electricity and then pipe it down through power lines into America. So, for example, when Donald Trump was threatening tariffs on Canada, Doug Ford, the Premier of Ohio, he responded with, "Wilbur, I'm just going to flick a switch and I'm going to leave most of the northern United States without electricity," because the northern United States, among other things, depends on electricity on Ontario Hydro, and that's the state-owned, well, provincial-owned electricity company of the province of Ontario. And it manufactures a lot of energy because, as we mentioned, Canada has a fuck ton of resources and not a lot of people, so not so much demand that they cannot, can eat it all themselves. So it's very natural for them to export these resources, including energy, including food. Canada's food exporter, even though it's a frozen wasteland for the most part. So yeah, that's a match made in heaven. Europe and Canada. Maybe we can let them into the Schengen. You know, maybe, I mean, I can go into the Schengen for a while. I've always wanted to visit Montreal. Toronto, I could go either way. I've always been fascinated by the culture of Canada. You know, I was almost Canadian because my parents wanted to move to Canada in the 90s, but yeah, that didn't work out. The flip side is, of course, that a lot of these moose burger munchers will have to be given access to Europe, but it's something we can live with. Europe and Canada, Canada and Europe, Euro-Canada. Oh, Euro-Canada, our home and native land. So stay awesome, Canucks. Do not worry. You know, we have a plan to extract you out of your abusive relationship with Florida man. So take care and bye bye.